All right, Max, I'm starting with you, though. How should we feel about Brady at this point? Do you think he's getting too much credit for the team's success?
Yeah, he is. And let me be very clear. He's playing well. When I said the cliff, everyone was like, oh, you think he's going to stink? I never thought he was going to stink. I thought he'd be just a guy, a jag. He's not. That's why I said I was wrong about the cliff. He's more than just a guy. And that's not just about leadership skills. He looks sharp. He has a lot of weapons, but he knows how to use them. But you could plug in a bunch of guys in Brady's position right now, and you'd have a two-loss team. At this point, you would have a two-loss team, a bunch of guys. Not every guy. There are quarterbacks who would, be 5-3, or some might even be 500 with this team. But there are a bunch of guys who would have the identical record. And they just barely beat the Giants. Oh, the Giants are always competitive. The Giants are almost a winless team. They're a one-win team. They're not a good team. They lost to the Saints. They lost to the Bears. And they have also some good wins, notably against the Packers. That's when they were really firing on all cylinders. Right after a game in which Brady made mental errors and the team made mental errors, you anticipated ain't going to be mental errors, which is why he deserves some credit. Brady's leadership will make sure that after a game like that, you might lose, but it ain't going to be because of upstairs. You made mistakes mentally. So for that, I give him credit. But the idea that the Bucs now have Brady and now they're amazing, they have an excellent defense. They have weapons wherever you look. Remember, Jameis won 7 games throwing 112 points to the other team. He won 7 games. If you just replace Jameis Winston with a guy who's not going to hand the ball over 30 times to the other team, 30 times, they're at least they're a 9-win team. I think that's not unreasonable to say they're at least a 9-win team, right? So you just plug a regular guy in. I think Brady gives you a premium over that for sure. By the way, even the offensive line, they draft talent on the offensive line. They have some guys emerging on the offensive line that look like Pro Bowlers. That team has every single thing you want, including the quarterback. But let's not pretend that it's just about the quarterback.
Well, first of all, nobody's pretending that it's just about anybody. We understand that it's a team game and you have certain elements of offense, defense, special teams. But when you're asking that question, you're really asking who deserves the most credit, not who's the only person that deserves all the credit. Who deserves the most? And I'm going to tell you it's Tom Brady. I would remind you that same defense that you're talking about with the exceptional coaching of Todd Bowles as your defensive coordinator, if you recall, Todd Bowles was there last year. So was Bruce Arians. So was Byron Leftwich. And on the defensive side of the ball, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were the 29th ranked defense and 30th against the pass. Like last year, they still have the number 1 defense against the run. But they've improved from 30th against the pass to 14 now, and they're a top 10 defense ranked at number 7. So, yeah, there's been vast improvement. What could possibly have something to do with that, Jeff Saturday? Could it be that 30 interceptions are not being thrown? That 112 points are not being given to the opposition, that ball control and moving the chains has something to do with the defense improving, because guess what? They get to rest, they get to plan, they can just go out there and play as opposed to having to cover for the multitude of mistakes that were made by Jameis Winston last year. At this time last year, Jameis Winston had 14 or 15 interceptions already. Tom Brady's got 20 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He's completed 66% of his passes. And when you look at it, Chris Godwin was supposed to be that electrifying talent outside the numbers that could really make some things happen for you, but he's missed half the games because he's been injured, and obviously he's out now. Hopefully he'll be back soon, okay? Mike Evans, he's coming along. We know what a stud he can be. Gronk and Brayton and all of these boys. But the bottom line is this. You look at Brady, it's not just his accuracy, it's not just his experience, it's also his leadership. Because when you galvanize the troops and you maximize the potential around you, a lot of credit needs to be given to that. We don't disrespect Bruce Arians. We know he can coach the game of football. We know he's knowledgeable about the game of football. He once took Arizona to the NFC Championship game, for crying out loud. And we know the job that he did filling in for Pagano in Indy, which is why he ended up getting the Arizona job. But the reality is this. When you look at Tom Brady, it ain't just his ability in throwing the football. It is ability to lead and to galvanize and to maximize the potential around him. That ain't Bruce Arians doing that. That ain't Byron Leftwich doing that. That's Tom Brady. And that's why he deserves more credit than anybody else on Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I would agree with Stephen A. on this. And I'll tell you, from a guy who believes that quarterbacks get way too much credit for wins and way too much credit for losses, I would say Tom Brady this year has unified this team and held this team together through unexpected, like the Godwin injury. O.J. Howard goes out for the year, right? Evans is hurt a little bit. Everybody's kind of nicked up. I mean, it's all kind of these little one-offs that he's kind of steadied the ship. And I think when you look at expectations for what Tom Brady is at 40-plus years old, I think he's playing. Before last night, right? Last night was a bad showing by all of them. They still get the win. You could argue that he's in the MVP conversation for what he's done with this football team. And I think when you talk about what a quarterback is, and I made this when we all talked about this when he went to Tampa Bay. He changes the culture of the building, and I think you see that. Last year's Bucks don't win that game, right? It's the little things that don't often show up on the stat sheet that you see him kind of will them. After that Chicago game that you made mention of, Max, where it was way too many mental errors, way too many things they did to shoot themselves and cause themselves all kinds of issues and problems. As they move forward, it's those expectations that go back into the locker room that make you a better team week after week after week. And I think the defense has done exactly what we expected them they would have to do. They would have to win games early in the season because it was going to take the offense probably half, maybe even 3/4 of the season to really get in rhythm. And you're seeing them begin to get that, right? And it's kind of that roller coaster. Some weeks they look good, and some weeks they don't. But Green Bay, I mean, like you said, the offense didn't really have to do much, right? The defense turned this thing around and made all kinds of plays. But I do believe that Brady deserves a lot of credit for what they're doing, not just because of what he's doing on the field, but that the same thing that Stephen A. is talking about, that leadership that he's bringing. It is a thread that goes through the team. And I'm telling you, coaches can't bring it to you. General managers can't bring it to you. There is something about guys like that in a locker room, it is a difference maker. Coaches can try, they can give you rah-rah speeches, all that, but when there is a coach on the field and the expectation from the player is actually higher than any general manager or coach can put on you. I played with it with Peyton Manning. I'm telling you, I watched it when he went to Denver and what it looked like there. There's something different about guys like this. And it doesn't just mean you're a great quarterback. I don't mean there's a lot of great quarterbacks. What he is different and special, and so I do believe he deserves a ton of credit in this situation.
Jeff, I get that, and you're talking from experience, so that's the way it feels, and I would not doubt that part of it is like the way we feel the Bucks are heading. That plays into it, and I wouldn't doubt you who've experienced this over so many years of a great career are speaking to things that are real. My point is this, your record is your record. Jameis Winston, they only were under 500 last year and just barely because their quarterback had an historical season in terms of turnovers and points to the other team. You just replace him with an average guy who turns the ball over 15 times instead of 30 times, right? Or throws 15 interceptions instead of 30. They're 9 wins. And we're talking about wins and losses right now. There are a bunch of quarterbacks. I'm not denying anything you're saying. You plug into Brady's position, they're probably 6-2 right now. By the way, Nick Foles, who's having a bad year and doesn't look good behind a porous offensive line and without weapons, beat Brady. They went head-to-head, and Nick Foles made a play at the end of the game, and Brady didn't. I think if you put a guy like that on this Bucks team, I think they're probably around 6-2, maybe 5-3. But there are other guys where they might be 7-1 right now.
Well, first of all, you're wrong. Secondly, you're assuming that everybody can do what Brady has done.
The Bears are
just because of the talent around them, which makes you wrong. And thirdly, you keep bringing up last year's 7-9 record. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the last 6 games, they lost the last 2 games of the regular season. The 4 games prior to that, they won. This is with Jameis Winston as their quarterback last year. Let me tell you who they beat. They beat the Atlanta Falcons, who obviously struggled last year. They beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. Don't get us started there. They beat the Indianapolis Colts, who really didn't have a quarterback at that time. And they beat the Detroit Lions. And so let's pay attention to who they're going up against, okay? And that does matter. in the National Football League as it does in any level of competition.
You're saying this
so
off a
again, I'm not
Giants
trying
win?
to sit up there and say that everything is about Jameis Winston, but you can't act like, oh, Jameis Winston's gone, but guess what? There are a whole bunch of other people that could have walked into Tampa Bay and do what Tom Brady is doing. Because they might be able to throw the football. Would they have been the right